actors study from the very beginning, it's all about understanding ourselves, building our self-awareness. That's the cornerstone of acting. And I believe it's the cornerstone of strong presentation skills. You have to know how you're showing up. What do I look like in this moment? What do I sound like? What is my face, my voice, my body doing that might be distracting or detracting from my message? And that really is the essence of what actors can bring to help speakers.
And here we go. So, hey there, and welcome to yet another episode of the World of Presentations podcast, brought to you by us at Presentation Agency 356 Labs. Yes, we not only help many of the biggest brands write, design, and deliver truly effective presentations, but we also organize what's now the biggest presentation skills event on the planet, which is called Present to Succeed. However, I'm sure that you're not listening to this podcast because of that. You're listening to this podcast because of our guest. And before I introduce her, just to give you context that my name is Boris and I actually am the founder of 356 Labs, and I'll be your host for today's episode. So who is with me? Everybody? Her name is Kerri Garbis, but wait a little bit, let me tell you a little bit more about her. Kerri is the founder and CEO of Ovation, your go-to resource for, she's pointing it out on the video now. Your go-to resource for professional presence and speaker development training. She is also, by the way, a professional actress, and that's true since she was a child. And lastly, Kerri and her team, and that's what I found, maybe she will tell us more about that, is actually working for companies like the Walt Disney Company, Microsoft, MasterCard, Tableau, and many, many more. Kerri, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Boris.
Brilliant. So, which are the other companies that you guys are working for?
Well, how long is this podcast? There's a lot. There's a lot. So let's
30 minutes?
I don't want to bore anybody at all.
Okay, one more. Your favorite one. Let's see.
No, wait a minute. That's a lot of pressure.
I know, that's a tricky one.
That is a lot of pressure. I would say some of the US top financial companies. How about I just put umbrellas on it? Some big kind of fun marketing companies, lots of tech, lots of pharma, and lots of companies of which I'm actually a client, which is always kind of fun. And then I geek out. And somebody just talked to us yesterday. We don't have their work yet, but I'm really hoping, because he's the head of the sales department for a massive dental company, and I'm obsessed with going to the dentist. And I was like, please let me help sales guys who's talked to dentists all day long. So
I don't like dentists, but that's just me, maybe.
No, I think
we'll see in the comments.
Yes. No, I think most people don't. I think I'm an odd one out. I think most people do not like going to the dentist. And I'm telling you, the day that it's my day to go to the dentist, I wake up and I'm like, it's the most wonderful day I'm so excited.
That's very rare to see, let's be honest here. By the way, let's see whether or not there will be comments indeed for how many people like going to their dentist.
I'm interested. Yes, unofficial poll. Yeah,
I'm also interested in that stuff. To be honest, it's a presentation podcast, but let's talk about the other people out there. Kerri, everyone has a very interesting story of how they ended up in the presentation space. What's your story? Like, how did you end up being a presentation person?
I love this space, first of all, and I'm so glad we connected. And I got into, I guess, a little bit by accident, because I was, as you said, and still am a professional actor. So I was living in New York, and a friend of mine called me and said, hey, I'm down the street at the Marriott Marquis, which is this hotel right in Midtown Manhattan, and I have to give a presentation, and you're an actress. I can't figure out where to go and stand on the stage. Like, I'm nervous. Come help me out. And I said, sure, I'll come down. So I walk down to the hotel. I find him in the ballroom. And to be fair, the stage was very oddly set up. So it was challenging to find the best spot to stand. And we rehearsed a little. We got to a place where he was feeling good. He had rehearsed, and then he said, "Hey, if you go hang out in the green room, which was just another conference room, I'll take you out to dinner after I'm done with my presentation." And I was like, "Sweet. I'll get some free dinner."
Let's
Because
do it.
if there's
Yeah.
one thing I like more than going to the dentist, it's getting a free meal. So I
So
go,
that you can go to the dentist later
yes,
on.
exactly. So I can pay then for the dentist later.
Maybe.
Exactly. So yeah,
Maybe.
exactly. So I was hanging out in this conference room with the other guys waiting. It was all bankers, and they were waiting to go do their presentations for this conference, and they were a hot mess. And I was asking them how they prepared for their presentation. Did they rehearse out loud? Did they, what did they do? And everything that they were telling
Yeah.
me was so counterintuitive in terms of preparation that I knew to be true as a professional actor, that I thought that was kind of this first sparked idea that said to me, maybe professional actors have something to say to business professionals who are giving presentations all the time. So that's really kind of the first step in for me.
All right. And you saying that, we didn't plan for that one, but surely you can come up with a very interesting answer to that one. Like, what are professional actors capable of saying to the business people who are being asked, as I like to say, to present whether they like it or not?
Right.
What can they teach? Like, what can an actor teach a speaker, let's say, no matter of their role, when we talk especially about our subject today, which is nerves,
Uh,
right? Just before hitting the stage, just before hitting that Zoom call or whatever call it is.
Sure.
What are the connection points there?
Sure. I know we're going to talk about nerves. Nerves are human. So actors, despite common belief, are actually humans as well. And so
Mm,
we experience nerves too, for sure. So that is something we can address hardcore, because we're often asked to stand in front of others and speak. The presentation text content is a little bit different than the script content that we have, and it prepared in some similar ways. So the same rules apply, though. We have to connect with our audience. We want them to move them to action in some way. We have to tell good stories. And actors study from the very beginning. It's all about understanding ourselves, building our self-awareness. That's the cornerstone of acting. And I believe it's the cornerstone of strong presentation skills. You have to know how you're showing up. What do I look like in this moment? What do I sound like? What is my face, my voice, my body doing that might be distracting or detracting from my message? And that really is the essence of what actors can bring to help speakers.
yeah. So how do actors know about that? Like you said that developing that self awareness is important, but how do they know all of that stuff? Is it through the rehearsing process? Is it through like coaching of some form? Is it a mix of like how is it? What's happening behind the scenes?
Actors often learn and build their self-awareness through their conservatory training programs, the acting classes they go to, and the coachings they too go to as well. So my undergrad experience was in upstate New York at Syracuse University, and our freshman year we were not able to perform, not able to be in any plays or any shows. And the reason for that was they wanted you to study the craft, get to know yourself, build your self awareness, get rid of any old habits that might still be creeping in when you're representing yourself as a different character, as a different person, and really understand how you move, how you behave, how you sound in a variety of situations. And essentially, we so that's how actors learn how to uh, build their self-awareness, through acting class, through conservatory training programs, and coaching.
Yeah, so that's more or less like if you have to kind of say, okay, wait a minute, what is the similar thing in the world of business professionals, that will be rehearsing, potentially rehearsing with a mentor, a coach that can
Yes.
give you the feedback that you need, more or
Yes. And
less.
if everybody were, I mean, that's one of my missions in life is to get people to rehearse. I think it's highly
Yeah,
underrated with business
indeed.
professionals and often not done well.
Hmm. Okay, we'll talk about
Okay.
that. Let's go back to the place where, to the thing that you mentioned we're going to cover, those nerves.
Yeah.
Speakers have them, speakers experience them, actors obviously experience
Oh,
them.
yeah.
What's going on? Like, why is that even happening?
It's getting nervous is a human condition. It goes back all the way to what is called the oldest part of our brain and the flight or fight response. It feels scary standing up in front of people, either face to face or virtually, and can feel like you're being attacked or about to be attacked. So your body reacts in the same way that our cavemen descendants were faced with
Yeah.
a lion or a bear or any number of other scary animals that I don't want to face as we emerged from our caves. Like it feels the same to our body, and we react often in the same way: sweating, heart fluttering, uh, anxiety, unable to focus, stammering, all the things that when you are faced with a scary essentially situation, an unknown situation, we react to. And that is the nerves. It feels as scary as getting attacked by any number of things.
Yeah, and so from there, so we should consider that normal, first of all, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you are
All
not
right.
experiencing nerves at any time, you're as odd as the person who likes to go to the dentist, probably.
For
For
example.
example.
All right, so yeah, many people are trying, especially during our trainings. One of the, probably the questions that is being asked very often is, how do I stop that? Like, completely shut it down. How do I remove that from myself? And I'm like, it'll be a very hard thing to do. Like, that's a normal human reaction. So do you know, or do you know somebody that truly shut it down? Like, do you know somebody that, an actor or a speaker that you worked with, that now doesn't feel that at all? Like, is not getting nervous before a speech or before a presentation? Anybody
No,
on top of your head?
not somebody who has shunned the feeling completely. And because
All
it
right.
is, but you can, what you can do is get it to work with you, to work alongside it,
Hmm.
to get it to be uh, to a place where it is not so distracting. Nerves may always be there, absolutely. And sometimes there can be perceived as positive and give you more energy, get that adrenaline going in a good, productive way. So it's the goal when we work with speakers on nerves is to not get them to go away. That could be an impossible task. It is to get them to nicely play along with you and work to your advantage and get them to a place where you're not totally consumed about thinking about how nervous you are. That's, we want you to get focused on something else: the audience, the message, the story, how you want the audience to feel, what do you want them to do, versus I'm nervous, oh my god, everybody's looking at me, I'm so nervous.
All right, and you saying that, like, let's jump into the, like, even more practical part. Let's call it this way.
Okay.
When you work with your clients, like, what do you advise them to do? Like, how do you approach their nervousness? Like, what are the top three things, approaches, methodologies, algorithms? Let's call it any way we like. Like, what are the top three things that our listeners, who are again those same people, the business people, what can they do? What should they know? Like, what would you advise them?
Absolutely. It's really important to first and foremost identify what happens when you get nervous. Is it an internal thing? Are you sick to your stomach? Can you not breathe very well? It, and or is it more external? Or is it things people can see? Do you get like really splotchy on your neck? That actually is me when I get super nervous, by the way. Is it sweating? Are you doing something physical, like constantly like wringing your hands? What happens to you? Is it cognitive? You get distracted, you lose your place, you wander around. There's so many things. So identifying what happens when you get nervous, because if we know what happens, I get really dry, I can't speak, I cough, then great, we're going to make sure you've got some water nearby when you're speaking, so we can start there. So first we want to identify what happens. Then we can start to, because it's so vastly different for different people, that we can give
Mm.
different exercises. Or do we want to do heavier work in breathing? Do we need to do more of a cognitive focus? So it really varies. But first you want to kind of see like, okay, what happens? How does this manifest itself for me? Is there
What happens with most people, like with most of your clients? What have you seen? Like, what is the, I don't know, the most popular reaction,
the most
with your
popular
clients?
reaction?
What would you say?
That the dry mouth thing is really common. That doesn't happen to
Mm.
me. That when I see people and I can see them get nervous, and losing focus is a huge one. I can see it.
Mm.
If we've worked with speakers and I know they're really well prepared, and then we oftentimes get to go to the conference and watch them in person or virtually, and I can see, you can see it. You can see when someone like something shifts, they get really nervous. And conversely, you can also see when people start to relax. So, off a kind of third most common thing is people get so nervous, like right at the top. They're like, and then maybe a couple minutes in, you can see the shoulders go down. They start to breathe a little easier, and they get into the groove of what they're doing. So
Mm.
the dry mouth, the losing focus, and the tippy top of the presentation seem to be the kind of biggest three popular ailing points I've seen.
Okay, and then once they know like how they react to going on stage or jumping on an important call, now they know how to attack it. Like what meaning they want, you are asking them to know what's happening with them so that you can attack that specific point. What's next? Like obviously you're attacking that specific point probably in one way or the
Sure.
other, but let's move on.
Yes.
Like what's happening
So
next?
overall, if somebody says, I really suffer from nerves, and a lot of people do. I think here in the States, it's like 73% of Americans experience stage fright, and it's been reported as the number one fear for Americans over the fear of death. So it's pretty prominent. So knowing you're in good company may help as well. But if often people say, "Oh, I just like I hate public speaking. I get really nervous," which also is a little heartbreaking to me. But I I'm here to help.
Yeah.
My organization, I create an organization and a platform to help people. So here it is. And uh, kind of the broad strokes is, we say you have to practice, rehearse. But again, that goes back to, we have to rehearse, and we have to rehearse well, because that can do
Mm.
other damage. You have to practice, you have to breathe, and you have to warm up. And
Okay.
so we'll give people quick resources for those. But those are kind of the broad strokes. Sometimes we'll really deep dive into, okay, what's your nervous trigger? Can we create a ritual that sort of breezes by that trigger? Can we avoid that trigger if that's possible? What are some ways that we can get into a better mindset? Can we add in some visualization? And we've got lots and lots of help. And some things work for some people really well, while other things work well for other people.
You're saying that people should be rehearsing well. Define what you mean when you say well,
Sure.
rehearsing
Yeah.
well. What does that mean?
Well, you're right. Well, it's kind of a misnomer. Right? Rehearsing productively or rehearsing with
All right.
accountability.
Okay.
So rehearsing, people are like, I rehearsed. I said it out loud, or the people, my favorites that I love to work with. Yeah, I thought through it.
Yeah.
That rehearsed. So oftentimes people think rehearsal is just repetition. I mean, that is the derivation of the word, and yet rehearsal really is, yes, it's repeating with changes, with implementing behaviors that are productive or productive to getting your message out. And so you need to think of, you always, when you rehearse, which in the ovation definition is saying something out loud, is saying something out loud with an end goal in mind. So we have a rehearsal process that we give every single speaker we work with. And you have to say, okay, I am going to rehearse, meaning I'm going to say it out loud with the goal in mind that I'm thinking about the structure of the presentation, the structure of the story. Okay, now I'm going to rehearse. I'm going to say it out loud. And I'm thinking about my body language or my voice inflection or my face, whatever it is, having a goal, because just repeating is only going to compound those bad habits. It's the same reason why we didn't do any public performing as freshmen in college for me, because we need to figure out what's not working and replace it with a better behavior, a better habit, more
Okay,
productive.
so does that mean that we can say, hey, wait a minute, once you're about to rehearse your presentation, the first time, let's say the first or one of the rehearsals, you only monitor yourself for and push yourself for this thing. The second rehearsal will be about that thing. And the third, so that the focus goes in one specific area. Is that, can we say that?
Yes, and you can have multiple focus areas as well. Especially in
Sure.
terms of, I understand business professionals do not have infinite time to rehearse. It is not their
That's true.
full-time job, unfortunately, to get up and give this presentation or speak at this conference. So there are ways to truncate the process and get it done efficiently, and so you can absolutely think about multiple things. The goal is to get your productive habits, your productive delivery habits into your muscle memory so that when you're presenting, so at maybe the end of the rehearsal process, maybe now you're in front of the audience, that you're not thinking about, what is my face doing? Am I breathing? Where are my hands? How's my eye contact? It's so strong and so ingrained in your presentation style. At that point, you're not thinking about it. So your only
Mhm.
job is to tell the story to your audience.
So have you heard? I love that. Like that is, you get to a point where it's just ingrained in you. You know, like that is, you internalize it so much it becomes part of you
Yes.
in a way. Have you, for sure you have received that question numerous times, but I was curious about your take on the number of rehearsals. Like a lot of people are asking, okay, so how many times should I rehearse it? Like, is it 3 times? I'm reading some places on the web say 5 times. Is it 8? Like, what is the, is there, because I'm coming from the IT world, from the IT space, and in that space there is something that when someone is searching for a number, we call it a magical number. You know, no one knows why that's the number, and that's why we call it a magical. So, is there a magical number of rehearsals? Let's go it this way.
So actors typically, if we're getting rehearsing a play or a musical, we will rehearse around all the way from the beginning until the moment we step in front of an audience. You're talking about an hour per minute that we're on stage. It-
Mm,
in reality, that is not magical. I'm just telling you that that's what actors do. The In business, in real life, we understand that that is not always possible, and
yeah,
that a lot of the conferences where we ready hundreds of speakers, they're 45 minutes, an hour long, and the speaker who really has a full-time job in addition to getting ready for
yep,
this conference isn't going to have the 60 hours to put into rehearsal. If you can say your presentation out loud 3 times prior to the audience, you are in very, very, very good shape. And especially if you're saying it 3 times with those specific goals in mind, you're rehearsing with accountability out loud 3
Yeah.
times. If you can't, often not the case, at least let's get in 2 times out loud all the way through. If that is not
All
possible,
right.
and and I've seen the situation where somebody's handed a presentation for someone else, they just don't have the time to put in. At least work on your intro, your conclusion, and some of those sticky transitions. Those are often
Yeah.
kind of the key places to work and rehearse through. I don't believe there is a magical number, and a rehearsal with accountability helps in any way.
But still, a 3 is a very, very good number. That's I would completely agree with the fact that like rehearsals are underestimated in the business world.
Absolutely.
I would completely agree that if most speakers, by speakers I mean business professionals, not
Sure.
people that, yeah, that's their job. If most business professionals like start rehearsing their 30-minute management presentations or quarterly update presentations or whatever, like just 3 times, we would be living in a completely different world nowadays.
Agreed. Agreed. I was on
Like,
a podcast a couple weeks ago, and the host asked me, who do you dream about speaker coaching, offering your coaching services to?
okay,
And I believe the point of the question was for me to name somebody really famous that I wanted to work with. And I totally went in a different direction. And I said,
all right,
anybody who doesn't believe that rehearsal is helpful. That's my dream person to work with. Anybody who does not think rehearsal helps, please call me.
yeah. Yeah, I think that the coolest part of that is that once people see what a rehearsal can do for them, like they immediately say, wait a minute, that really makes sense. I mean, wait a minute, I should have been doing this for so long now.
Yes.
But most of the times what we are seeing with our customers when we are building the presentations and then coaching them before they go on stage and deliver that, most of the times their rehearsal is actually the one that's the life experience, the one that's on stage. And I'm like, that's not a good idea, right? Like, that's never a good idea. You can do it. Probably you can do it,
Right.
but you never know what you will miss. Like the opportunities that you can miss because of not rehearsing and potentially not saying something in the way you could have said it
Right.
with rehearsals, you cannot measure afterwards.
Right.
And that has to keep you alive. That has to keep you like constantly, how can I say it, I mean somehow aware that, hey, I need to spend time on this.
Right.
By the way, is it, just curious,
Hmm.
like you're working with so many people from so many industries, etc., is it that when you're coaching them, the people that are higher in the ranks listen more to your advices than the ones that are lower in the ranks? Like, what are you seeing there? Because in our case, it's surprising to see that when we work with, for example, a CEO of a big financial institution, let's say a bank, this person really listens and really wants to take all of the advices that we are giving them. Then you go to the same organization, but let's say some mid-level management, you're giving those same advices or similar advices depending on the person's situation, what have you, and they still think they know it. Like they're like, I don't need that. That is not exactly how it should be. I'll do it my way still. What are you seeing in your world?
I'm finding it not aligned always with level, more
Okay.
of, has this person requested the training or wanted to take advantage of the coaching that they get with us prior to the event, or are they forced to
Okay.
be there?
Okay.
Sometimes people are, as I like to say, voluntold to go to a workshop or a coaching session with us, or some of the big conferences that we support, they'll say, well, your scores were this number last year, you need to go through speaker training. And it's like the person who signs up for a gym membership, their motivation to go is because they want to get healthier, they want to get stronger. And if they just sign up and be like, yeah, I signed up, I have my gym membership, and they're not going because they're not motivated to get any better, that's, you're going to see like, no, no, I'm fine. I can just, I'm fine. I'm going to be over here eating my chips. I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, that for sure plays a huge role. Indeed, like, is it you that is requesting the help, or
Right.
are you being asked and brought to the training without even being asked sometimes whether or not you want to go there at all?
Yes. I will have to say that a lot of people at different levels that we work with, when they actually do the work, follow the rehearsal process, take our advice, the result is tremendous and oftentimes surprising for them. I had worked with a very high level bank executive for a couple months. He pretty much bought into it, and then had a very big pitch coming up, and decided, he said, Kerri, I'm going to follow all of the advice from Ovation. I'm going to do every single step of the rehearsal process. I'm going to do everything you told me. And then a couple weeks later, he called me. He said, you wouldn't believe what happened. I'm like, what happened, Steve? And he said, we won the deal. And it was the best presentation I had ever given. And I'm like, well, actually, I'm not really surprised.
Yeah.
So it does, it works.
Yeah, I'm like, when you're telling the story, I'm also not surprised at all.
Right.
Like, sometimes we work also with startup founders. We have been numerous times with security investments from those guys, for those guys, because when we get to the competition, let's put it this way, the bar is set so
Yes.
low that even before the person that we worked with and worked for gets on stage, we already know that he's going to do it.
Yep.
He or she will win the investment.
Yep.
It's so obvious
Yes.
when you see what's out there in terms of like how much the people are prepared and how they speak in front of, let's say in this case, investors. And then once you know what your person is coming with and his or her preparation and what that is, it's just so black and
Yeah.
white.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy to differentiate still through your presentation skills. It is
Oh,
truly
absolutely.
amazing.
Yeah.
Truly amazing. A lot of advices out there on the web. We had this question here on when we were talking about the podcast. Is there an advice about calming down your nerves that you have found on the web, or that you got from someone of your clients that have read something on the web, or whatever, that made you laugh, or that you heard and you were like, that doesn't make sense at all? Like, do you remember a situation where you received or someone told you something, or you read something that you were like, not sure about that? And what was that thing?
Sure. So every couple years we'll be working with a group of people, and then we'll talk about nerves and how we're going to manage them, and somebody inevitably always raises their hand and is like, what helps me? I do shots before I go on for a presentation.
All right.
And
Alcohol.
yes, and while I enjoy a nice glass of wine with dinner as much as the next person, we do not condone any alcohol before present. We want to be fully present and aware. So that any alcohol can, I understand that alcohol can calm people down, so that may be appealing. We don't recommend it. The other one we hear is the old adage, and I don't know if you've heard this one, about picturing the audience naked.
Yeah.
Yes. So I
A lot of times.
Right. So I was really curious about where this came from. The only context I had to it was, as a kid, I was watching Brady Bunch reruns. Brady Bunch was a very popular show here in the US in like the I think 60s, early 70s. So as a kid, I'm watching the reruns, and one of the kids in the show goes to take his driver's ed test, and he's super nervous. And they're like, "Oh yeah, here's what you do when you get super nervous. You picture the other person in their underwear," because it was family primetime television. And I have since heard that, like, "Oh, aren't you supposed to picture the audience naked?" This doesn't make any sense to me, because I just think that would find that extremely distracting and a lot of work to picture a lot of people or one person in naked in their or in their underwear. And I researched, where did this come from? It couldn't have just come from this Brady Bunch episode. I found a quote from Winston Churchill that alluded to something of picturing the audience naked, and I think that's where it came from, at least from my research. And if any of your listeners know where this came from, I'm happy to gain that knowledge. I don't think it works. Now, that being said, Boris, if it works for you, if it works for anybody, if it makes you less nervous to picture people naked or in their underwear, go for it. If that works for you,
Yep.
Great. Just in my experience, it's a lot of work.
All right. So 35 minutes already in. Time is flying by. So one last question before the real last question.
Yes.
We always ask our guests who else we should have on our podcast, and that is just one name that is coming from our space, or is a business persona that made a huge impression on you with their presentation skills, so that we can bring them in and somehow relate them to the podcast. Do you have a name for us? Like, what do you think? Anybody? Or a business person that you think is a really great presenter, or that you worked with, improved a lot, and now we can interview them and probably ask them, hey, tell us a little bit more about how did you ended up working with like Kerri, or like somebody.
Oh. All right. I've got some ideas.
All right.
I need to think. Can I think about it?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can.
Thanks.
You'll think about it and send it over email, and
Yes.
we'll put it afterwards in the show notes.
All right.
The last one. Where can people find more about you, the company, and what you're doing?
All right. I'm going to nail this answer, Boris. Are you ready?
Let's go.
The company.
Let's hit it.
GetOvation.com.
All right.
Get Ovation. You can also find me, Kerri Garbis. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Every Tuesday, I'm live giving tips and strategies to help with presentations and overall professional presence, either in person or virtually. So find me, Kerri Garbis, or head over to getovation.com. Easy.
Brilliant. Easy. Indeed. It is easy. It's not like our name, 356labs.com, and many people are like, was it 365 labs? Or like,
right.
I have heard 359 labs, many things. Anyway, we'll make sure that we link the getovation.com website, and your website in this case, and also your Facebook and LinkedIn profile. So everyone that's listening, those links are in the show notes. You will find them also in the blog post for the episode. Kerri, that was so much fun. We need to do it again at some point, because time is definitely flying by. It's almost 40 minutes now.
Wow.
So thank you for joining us. That was super nice.
You're welcome. I looked forward to continuing the conversation. Maybe we regroup after your big conference next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everyone, if you have a question for Kerri or for the episode itself, please, wherever you find this episode, just comment, and we'll make sure that if she doesn't see your question, we'll make sure that we tag her, we scream at Kerri,
yes,
or
please do.
We'll do whatever needed so that she can answer.
Right? Yes, and let us know how you feel about the dentist, right? We gotta circle back to that.
Don't forget about that one. The dentist part is very important. In the meantime, check out our website, also 356lab.com, see what we are doing, and of course, presenttosucceed.com, which is the conference that's coming up in April 2022.
I'll be there. Right? I'll be there.
Brilliant. Everyone, hope you enjoyed this conversation. Share if you like it, subscribe if you truly like it. And yep, I think together with Kerri, we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.